but it's almost like I'm hearing you're saying that leadership models need to evolve, and they need to evolve in the sense that they need to include process, strategy, structure, but you also talk a lot about this, and I would love for you to spend a few minutes to really kind of, bring
Sure.
your perspective for everybody else. Is you talk about the fact that, hey, listen, when you say structure, you say work structure of people who are going to be
Right.
carrying the work out. And I really love your point of view on that. So if you could you just elaborate that for everybody else, kind of, what do you mean by
Sure.
you've got to bring the work structure into the whole equation? It's not just about
Sure.
people and structure.
Okay. Well, I noticed this many, many years back. And within the HR function, you have an OD function and you have a leadership function.
Hmm.
And I could never understand why they were being separated,
Right.
because an organization is a system to get work done by people. So how can you be separating these things? And then you have this almost philosophical leaning towards either hard side or soft side, and a lot of faddism going on in
Hmm.
terms of empowerment or re-engineering hard ass. I mean, lots of things that are single point focus that lose a sense of context.
Hmm.
And I think one of the reasons that this is becoming more, I'm not sure if it's I'm sure it's not noticed as much as it is, but the reason it keeps coming up is the environment is pushing organizations in ways they've never been pushed before,
Hmm.
whether it's the pandemic, whether it's supply chain, whether it's global unrest, political
Hmm.
unrest. And so if you're lopsided, if you just care about the people, but you haven't put in place the processes and strategy and work structure to be
Hmm.
able to deliver the results, good luck. It's just not going to be successful. And so I think it's an opportunity to stand back and get away from something that the other picture in my mind, I'm very, very visual,
Yeah.
is the elephant. And you
Yeah.
and I had a fun conversation about the blind man and the elephant.
And the
Why don't
elephant.
you
Yeah.
why don't you tell that little parable, and then I'll come back and elaborate.
Yeah, and I think most of us have probably heard about this, this parable or this metaphor where you have a person with a blindfold and what they're doing, or you have multiple. The story is told a couple different ways. It's a one person with a blindfold or multiple people in a room with blindfolds. But the idea is very simply this: is that they're all touching a different part of the elephant, and they all have a different perspective of what they're dealing with, and none of them has the complete picture. And because they're not touching the whole elephant, number one. Number two, they have their blinders on. So it almost seems to me, when you say that comes to mind, it's almost like, the leadership development, world that we live in today seems to me is very similar to that. Wouldn't you agree? Like the blind man and the elephant metaphor, we need to look at the complete picture. And again, seeing the complete picture means that then we can evolve to building and sustaining these leadership development movements that we were
Yeah.
talking about leading into this conversation, right? That's
Yeah.
the story.
Right, right. And over my many decades, I have seen different patches, different parts on the elephant.
Mm,
In fact, I
mm.
redraw it every couple of years because it changes. And so you had re-engineering, and then you have
Yeah.
self-managed teams. And I don't know if it's an American cultural thing or what. I mean, we like easy answers. We went the
Mm,
4 steps. And so a lot of these things, which have some goodness to them, are taken out of context
mm.
and completely, they're implemented in a way that doesn't keep the elephant whole. There's like a whole graveyard of pieces of
Yeah.
elephant things that have fallen off. And so an example, I came up with this because I'm always watching, I'm always seeing. And I have noticed that when you take a verb like
Mm.
empower or align or engage, and you put meant on the end, you make it a noun.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you run the risk of it being highly programmatic.
Right.
And if they're soft side things, they come from the HR people. If they're hard side things, they come from
From a
finance and
business.
operations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't really get through the fog. They don't look at the whole elephant. They don't
Mm,
think about it as a whole organized system. And so very often it doesn't get down to the work. And the
Mhm.
work is where the value is delivered. And if you're changing your strategy, if you've got a purpose that is changing strategy, if you don't work it down to that level through people, it's just not going to work. That is the job of leaders.
Right.
And we have not served them very well. When I learned about Rejuvi and learned it
Mm.
was marrying leadership excellence with business excellence, I mean, you had me right there. You had me right there. But then as I came to learn more about Rejuvi and thought about the backwards Z,
Hmm.
which really is an approach and a way to think through really the elements of the 7S model in a way that it all hangs together.
Right.
And so, because I think leadership is just, well, you deal with the people part. No, you deal with the organization and the business part. You deal with all of it.
Right.
And I've always been intrigued by how the architecture of Rejuvi brings leader, business, and then
Yeah.
through the backwards Z gives
Yeah.
leaders a path
So
for that
yeah. So
very thoughtful, integrative approach,
right.
which
Yeah.
is
No,
not
thanks for
human nature. I mean, we
yeah,
want
exactly.
simple
And it's
answers.
right. It's not naturally occurring, in other words. So it's almost like it needs mindfulness and intent, and support to build it. I just before we go further, you used a term called Rejuvi, backward Z. Now I'm very familiar with it. You are as well. But for folks who are not, let me just put up a quick visual here to see if this explains what we're talking about here. So at Rejuvi, what we've done is we've developed this framework, if you may, and we refer to it as a backward Z, but it's basically these four things. If you can see my chart here, so it basically starts with intent, then it goes over to the work of intelligence, then kind of travels across the over here to the to target, and then number four is implement. So if you follow that pattern, it really looks like a backward Z. Okay, so that's what we're referring to. And the whole idea here is that when we say intent, it's all about asking questions in service of the organization, about saying, where are we headed? Why is it important for us? And then how do we succeed? Intelligence is all about how do we structure our work, if you may. A key thing in target, a key question could be, how do we bring others along? What are the milestones, if you may? And implement is all about short-term implementation. Can everybody bring their best? So coaching teams, how far and how fast, or how do we set those targets? So anyways, I just wanted to give that quick primer to folks who probably are not familiar with the backward Z. But that's what you're talking to. You're saying that this
Right.
framework of the backward Z is, it gives organizations the ability to now be very mindful or very structured around that work, which is, it's bringing that the business excellence and the leadership excellence together. And it also is giving folks the ability to kind of to follow that path, to be consistent, because it's not in human nature to do that naturally. So we almost have to
Right.
work on building that muscle so that we continue to do that.